Welcome to Niagara, Wisconsin for the second annual Cemetery Walk.
Go breathe in, and hello. My name is J Waitrovich. Like my four older siblings, I was born in our native country of Czechoslovakia on July 27, 1909. My parents are Andrew and Mary. My father was born in 1874, my mother 1882. They were married 1902. They had and raised 7 children: Joseph, Mary, Andrew, August, we called Midge, Edward, Helen, and Frank, we called Frania. In 1913, there was news of coal mining jobs in America in the state of Oklahoma. So my father, like others in our village, sailed from Bremen, Austria to Galveston, Texas. As you can see from this map, at one point, Austria did have its own port. The sailing took place in February, and he was at sea. Once the ship arrived in Galveston, passengers had to go through immigration. My father took a train to Alderson, Oklahoma, where he did work in a coal mine. September of that year, he sent for us. 2 years after we arrived, we moved to a town called Buck. My sister and brother were born. In 1919, we moved to a town called Blanco and stayed there for 3 months. We moved again to Ridgeway until 1925, finally moving to Round Top until 1930. Unfortunately, my father died April 30th, 1929. He was only 54 years old. A year later, my mother moved the family to Hartshorn, where the family stayed. She took a job as a cook for one of the managers of the coal mine my father had worked for. In 1928, our Uncle Frank, our mother's brother, sent word to his nephews that jobs were available at the company he was working at in Kingsford, Michigan, called Ford Motor Plant. My brother Andrew was the first one to go. Unfortunately, by the time he got there, no jobs were left. However, Kimberly Clark had a paper mill in Niagara, Wisconsin looking for workers. When my brother Frank was old enough to come to Niagara to get a job at the mill so he can be with us, they were no longer hiring. However, Kimberly Clark had a paper mill in Neenah, Wisconsin looking for workers. That's where he got a job and raised his family. My brothers and I stayed at the Kim Lark Inn, which was a boarding house. Today, it's known as Jim's Redbird Inn. It was at Kim Lark Inn where I met and became really good friends with Joseph Sikowski, who also worked at the mill. Shifts at the mill were 4-6 hours, so him and I decided to go into business together by operating a standard gas station, which lasted only a few years. It was also at Kim Lark Inn where I met the lady of my life, Florence Kadalski. She had a sister, Helen, dating Joseph Sikowski at the time, so we did go on double dates together. Florence and I were married October 7th, 1935. Shortly after we were married, we bought a house in Kingsford, which we had it moved to its current location at 816 Vine Street. My mother-in-law, Anna Kadalski, actually purchased that land for us so we could be near her and right across the street. Florence and I were blessed to have 4 children: Jerry, Sue, Peggy, and Terry. Of all my children, Peggy was my favorite, as well as her youngest, my granddaughter Catherine. In my free time, I enjoyed playing golf, going fishing, and deer hunting. I didn't want to brag for golf, but for putting I was known as Eagle Eye Ed. I walk to work. I can speak and read Polish, and I did enjoy cooking rożniki, potato pancakes, and my famous homemade rolls. I was really fortunate to have my brothers not only working in the mill with me, but living either next door, which was Midge, or a few houses down, which was Joseph and Andrew. We each had and raised our own children. They went to the same school. We saw each other quite frequently, so you can quite imagine of Niagara being a small town, so we became a real close family. My sisters, however, stayed in Oklahoma and had their own family, and they took care of our mother, whom we saw about every 2 years until she died, which was 1969. That was the beginning of the end of the Waitrovich family era. My wife died a year after that. My brother Joseph died in 76. Midge died in 86. I died in 94. Frank died in 95. Andrew and Mary died in 96. They died actually 3 days apart. Helen died in 2000. I retired from the paper mill in 1971 after 43 years of employment. During that time, I went from a laborer to a foreman to a supervisor of the high yield mill. During that time, I did earn my GED. Finally, it was the end of another era. Kimberly-Clark Paper Mill. As you can see from this chart, it had been through more than one ownerships. Its last year of production was in 2008. It was torn down between 2012 and 2013. Had my brothers and I been alive, we would have done everything possible to keep that mill up and running for the next generation to come, live, work, and raise their family in the beautiful, scenic Niagara, Wisconsin. Thank you.
Lifelong resident of Niagara. I was born and raised here. I was born in 1940, graduated high school in 1958. My senior year of high school is when I started dating my wife, Janice. We were married in 1959. After high school, I tried going to college at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. I only lasted a few weeks and decided it wasn't for me. So in January of the next year, I went to barber school. After I graduated barber school, Janice and I got married. For 10 years, all of our children were in Chicago. 1 year, around 1968 or 1969, while the family and I took a trip down to see my sister and her husband, Bill, who was in the Navy at the time, living in Virginia Beach. Bill and I went out one night, and after having a few, decided that we wanted to go back to the area. So when we got back from vacation, I would come up to Niagara every week and just start looking for work, and I actually got Bill a better job than I got myself. Bill started working at the airport as a mechanic, and I took a job as a teller at the bank in Niagara. The reason for the move was to get out of the big city and to get back to, the small town and where we enjoyed a lot of outdoor activities. I was an avid fisherman. This is my fly fishing gear over here, my waders and my fly fishing pole. I was also a ski jumper. These are my actual jumping skis. The Kiwanis Club Niagara kind of died out after a while, and when my kids were old enough, me and a couple other guys from Niagara, Bro, Sam Chartier, got together and we reformed the Kiwanis Club. Ski jump at the time needed some work, so we raised money and got the ski jump fixed up. And Ken and Roger both learned how to ski jump as well. I was an avid golfer. I was on a mission to find the best putter that I could. I probably bought dozens of putters over the course of my life, but this is one that I fabricated for myself. Still wasn't the best putter with it. This is my picture, just going back in time a little bit. This is my mother and father, Ted and Vera Mays. This is Janice and I on our wedding day. And then this is a picture of my mom and dad and I and my sister Marilyn. Different pictures of events throughout my life. This is me dancing with my daughter at her wedding. This is a picture of my wife's family. Had 5 generations alive for many years. This is a 5th generation on my wife's side. When I went into barber school and became a barber in Chicago, became very good friends with a gentleman by the name of Felix Salazar. After graduating from barber school, Felix and I opened up a shop together. After about a year, we ended up opening up another shop in the Arlington Heights area in the strip mall, where we were one of the first men's hairstyling salons. It wasn't a very popular thing back then, and we actually had to have a private booth where if you were a guy and wanted to get your hair styled, you could go in this private booth so you wouldn't be seen by other people getting your hair styled.
That's so cool.
I was, in my adult life, I was avid golfer. If you couldn't find me at home, you could find me out on the golf course. This is just me with a bunch of my golfing buddies. There's a very interesting story behind the stuffed bear in this picture. This is a big polar bear, almost life-size, about the same size I am. I was working for the credit union. We were down in Orlando or Tampa Bay at a seminar, and we went to a carnival in Orlando. And I did a ring toss game, and I ended up winning this big bear. Shortly after I won the bear, the carnival people escorted us out. They thought I was a pro, so they wouldn't allow us to play any more games. We flew down to Tampa Bay, so on the way home, we checked into how we were going to get this bear home. The airline said the only way we could get it home on the plane was to buy a ticket for it. So we didn't do that. So then we went to UPS, and it was a pretty expensive fee to have it shipped as well. And we went out for dinner that night, and we ran into a couple from Niagara who actually were on their honeymoon and had just gotten married, and they had driven down to Florida, so they actually drove the bear home for us. And then this is just a picture of my 3 granddaughters from Lori and Mark with the bear once we got it home. These are my 2 oldest nieces, Tanya and Amber, both avid athletes. They take after their father, not so much their mother. Next to that is a picture of me on my 50th birthday. A bunch of us gentlemen in Niagara would get together every morning down at the clubhouse and have coffee. And on the morning of my 50th birthday, I went down and they surprised me with birthday cake. So there I am eating some birthday cake. Musically, Johnny Cash was one of my favorite artists. I thought that I did a pretty good rendition of Johnny myself. My kids got sick of me singing him, Johnny Cash songs at the time. This actually is an album that when I was in high school, I won a band contest and actually got the opportunity to go to the University of Wisconsin and play with the Wisconsin Marching Band. This is a picture of me playing with the band. If you were to come closer, I'm right here with the geek in the glasses. And this is actually an album of a recording that they made of the concert we performed. That's all I have. Any questions for me on it?
Whatever.
Welcome. My name is Clara F Moreau, and this is my husband, Gilbert. I was born on September 23rd, 1905, in Powers, Michigan, on the Vieser farm. My parents, Joseph and Elizabeth Vieser, raised 7 children on the Vieser farm, which is now over 100 years old and still in the Vieser family. At the age of 16, I graduated high school and went to college in Marquette, Michigan for 2 years, earning my teaching degree. I taught all grades in a one-room schoolhouse in Powers, having to arrive early in the winter in order to get the coal burning in the furnace. For entertainment, I love to go dancing on Saturday nights at the Four Corners Dance Hall. I think that's the reason my husband fell in love with me.
Good night, you're nuts.
I was raised in a strong Catholic family and carry the practice of praying the daily rosary throughout my life. My first boyfriend was a fellow named Ivan Kell, but that was until I fell in love with Gilbert.
My name is Gilbert, and I was born on November 4th, 1904 in Harris, Michigan, and raised on a farm in Jam Dam. My parents, Dave and Josephine Moreau, raised 5 children. I lost my dad when I was 9 years old. He was building his barn when he hit his thumb with a hammer. He developed blood poisoning and died. I was able to continue with school through the 9th grade, but had to leave school in order to go to work. My first job was a cook's assistant in a lumber yard. I was also hired by Joe Wieser to work on the Wieser farm, where I met Claire. On Sunday afternoons, I like to play pool at the pool hall in Powers. It was here that a man in charge of hiring for the Kimberly-Clark Mill in Niagara found me and some friends on a Sunday afternoon in 1919. He told us, "If you want a job at the Niagara Mill, be there on Monday morning." I walked 30 miles to work the next day.
In 1930, we got married and moved to Niagara. That's our wedding picture. We lived up on the hill in one of the company houses for about 12 years before moving to 1540 Park Street, up behind St. Anthony's Catholic Church. Here we raised our 6 children. First came Bill, then Jim, which is known as Fish, then Pat, which is Choppers, and when Carol came along, I said, "Here comes the girls," and sure enough, our 3 girls came next, Carol, Elaine, and Yvonne. Our boys were always very good at sports, and we loved to travel to all of their games. Sundays were very special and often spent either at the Wieser farm or at our Park Street home with family visiting. The daily rosary continued its tradition with the whole family gathering in the living room after the evening meal. Our kids loved to hang out at the clubhouse in town. On Saturday evenings, we all gathered around the radio and listened to the barn dance or the Grand Ole Opry. We worked hard, but we also knew how to have fun. Living through the Great Depression taught us to never waste anything. If you save enough soap scraps, eventually you can make a new bar of soap. Our oldest son, Bill, served in the Korean War and thankfully came home safe to us. He married and gave us our first grandchild, Kay.
We had a very happy marriage. We laughed a lot and just enjoyed everyday life. Our faith was strong, and it was our faith that saw us through our toughest time. We were on a trip to Canada. I had wanted to see the Kimberly-Clark Mill there, so we took a trip to Terrace Bay to tour the mill. On our way home, a police officer found us at a restaurant and said we had received a telegram from Niagara. We received the news our oldest son Bill was killed in a car accident. Kay was just little, and wife Barbara was expecting their second child, Lori. We prayed the rosary all the way home.
We raised 6 wonderful children and have 22 grandchildren and 40 more great-grandchildren and 4 great-great-grandchildren. We taught them to keep strong under your faith, work hard, and most of all, just love one another.
Thank you.
Story of J Hohol. My father was born in Brooklyn in 1879. He came to the United States as a young man. He had a brother, Joseph, who lived in Chicago. Anthony married Elizabeth Galbavorski in 1907. Elizabeth also was born in Poland. She came to this country by boat when she was 9 years old to live with her aunt and uncle, Catherine and John Rosinski. She started to work at the Grandview Hotel behind the mill when she was 12 years old. This is a picture of the Grandview Hotel. And I showed them, told him about that grand view. He said, "Well, I got a picture of it." He said, "I'm going to give it to you." And he said, my mother worked there, and she met her husband in that same hotel, and they got married. So that was something new I learned. Then Anthony and Elizabeth raised 17 children, including 1 set of twins. They were all born at home. Names and dates on the card I would have. So I got them right here. And John was a baby, 1908. He died the same year. Frank, 1909, died 1971. Walter was born 1910, died in 1990. Edward, 1912, and died in 2000. Helen was born in 1914 and 1970. And the funny part, they got the picture of Helen that you show them. Anyway, I wanted a picture of all of our children in the family, you know. It's all a family picture of right there. This picture here, we actually at my sister's funeral. Her name is Helen Cabay. Well, I wanted to have all of our children in one picture, so I gave it to Walmart, and the woman up there was kind enough to squeeze her in there. And then I had a picture of my brother Stanley, which was in a jacket, so that was good because everybody had their coats on, so that matched. So here's a picture of 15 of us now, which we never would have had. And then Joseph was born in 1915, died 1994. Stanley was born 1916, died 1959. Florence was born 1918 and died 2015. Henry was the baby. He lived to be 2 years old. That was in 1920. He died in 1922. Bernice was 1921. She died in 1999. And my sister Marion was born in 1924 and died in 2000. My brother Chester was born in 1923 and died in 1999. And Stephanie was one of the twins. She was born in 1926, 1925. Stella was the other twin. She was born in 1926 and died in 1994. I myself was born in 1928. I'm 88 years old right now. My brother Pat was 1931 and born and died in 2015. Joan is 1933. That's when she was born, but she's still living, and she lives in the Sturgeon Bay in a nursing home. Then we go down to where my father was a good businessman. He worked at Peter Kozlowski's tavern behind the mill until he had his own tavern on Vinecourt Street until he died in 1940 when he was 60 years old. And he had a shoemaker shop in the back of the tavern. He also repaired clocks, watches, and was a detective and did carpentry work and cut all the children's hair. He belonged to the Polish band. He had concerts on the bandstand in the park where the Vinecourt apartments are today. Elizabeth was a wonderful cook. That was my mother. And she made delicious pasties, pierogies, bread, and dessert. The children's clothing was stored on shelves in the big closet. Each child would find the right size clothing for themselves or the shoes. Some of the children went to live in Chicago when they were old and enough to, including Frank, Walter, Helen, Florence, Bernice, Marion, Stella, and Joan. My mother, Elizabeth, died at 84 years of age. The brothers who stayed in Niagara all worked in the paper mill except Pat, which ran an insurance company. The mill workers were Ed, Joe, Stanley, Chet, and myself, George. All of the brothers loved hunting and fishing. There are 13 family members buried in this cemetery, plus wives, the husbands, and grandchildren, for a total of 24. Anthony and Elizabeth had 46 grandchildren, over 100 great-grandchildren, and 100 great-grandchildren. There are only two of their children living today, which is me, which I'm 88, and my sister Joan, who lives in Sturgeon Bay in a nursing home, which is 83 years of age. And there's some pictures of my dad's tavern, and it shows two of the fellows in there that were townspeople. And that's my mother and dad's wedding picture. And here is part of my dad's family. And on the picture is my sister Helen, my father, Anton, my brother Walter standing next to my father, and then there's Frank standing in the back of Walter, and then you got Joseph, Florence, Elizabeth, and Stanley. And we've got this already, I believe. And like I said, my father was smart enough to buy a great big parcel of land here at one time. The members would be buried here, but not quite all of them, but there's quite a few. So he was pretty smart in that respect. He had a beautiful front yard, and cedar hedge all the way around the whole property area. He had beautiful maple trees and such. He had a nice garden, a pear tree, apple trees, plum trees. He kept everything real neat, and I can remember him asking me at times to crawl under the tavern. There's a small little window about a foot and a half square, and he used to have me take leaves and plug them all around the piping for the bathrooms area so the pipes wouldn't freeze. So that was something. He had a big shed, had a big wall about 8 inches thick, and in there he kept the ice for the tavern from Lake Antoine, and later on he dug a root cellar under the tavern for his beer case, barrels and underneath the tavern. And I remember him, an article I just found that there was some robbery down in Athelstane, and the guys escaped. So these two fellows came into a tavern one day, and being that I had a little detective knowledge to him, he put two and two together and said, called the police and told, which was Dr. Schaefer, with the police, and he said, the two suspicious guys here that came into the tavern, maybe you better check it out. So they went down where the old bridge used to be, and that's where they caught them. They did get some of the money, but not all of it back. So that's some of our history that I can recall. Our house is still standing there. Although it looks kind of sad because all the trees are gone and the cedar hedges are gone. And of course the tornado did most of the damage because it knocked down all the trees and some of the hedges. But then again, when they widened the highway out, they took out the hedges too. And so that changed the picture of the property considerably. That's all I can say is I hope that my younger children will carry on our history and keep recording it as time goes by. Always remember to keep your addresses or names of the people on the back of the pictures, because a lot of pictures are thrown away because they don't know who is on them. I talk to different people and they say, well, we don't know them, so what we're going to keep them for? In the garbage they go. It shouldn't be. Save it. Give it to the museum. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.